Hey everybody, Bill Hoy back. What in the world's going on? It's my YouTube channel. And this video is going to be a tough one. This video is going to be a really, really tough video for anyone who watches it to be able to handle. Because the title is going to be Slavery is a Choice. Yes, folks, slavery is a choice. And slavery going on now is a choice. Why do many people choose to be slaves in today's modern world here in the United States? Mostly for a paycheck and a pension, or a day's pay or week's pay, or for their weekly pittances. But let's start with slavery in the South, the abhorred practice of slavery in the South. It just blows my mind that people would look at human beings as property. That people would look at other human beings as animals. It just shows the dark occult and their mind control tactics that have gone throughout the centuries, with Christopher Columbus and the Vatican joining together to form this false form of Christianity that, basically, in so many ways, said that there's chosen races and there's races that are inferior and that can be killed off, basically. That's a summary. I didn't want to get too much into the Columbusicism and that kind of stuff, but I do want to talk about the fact that the truth about humans is that there is no such thing as races and sub-races. There's only one human species, one human phylum. All humans, and this is the truth, and people don't want to deal with this, is that there's only one human species. There's no such thing as sub-races. Those are all made up human constructs. The whole idea of race, there's no such thing. There's different cultures, different ethnicities, and stuff like that, but when it comes to scientifically the truth, all humans are the same. No matter what color your skin color is. We're all one human species, and the whole social Darwinism thing, and just this whole idea that there's different races. There's no different races, no different species of humans. And a lot of people will look at that and think that I'm trying to be some flower power, hippie, ebony and ivory living together in harmony and all that kinds of stuff, and that's all propaganda, man. That's all new age shit. That's all just mind tricks. And the truth is that I think it's I will look this up, and I'll do a further video on this. I think in a fifth grade textbook, fifth grade science textbook, it says this. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? So once again, I'll look into all that stuff. I'm going to do a video on that. But let's go to slavery in the South. Let's talk about slavery in the South, because I want to stick to slavery as a choice. I want to stick to that. Slavery, slaves in the South. And this is something that people just don't want to hear. Slaves in the South made a choice to be slaves. They did. The only time, coffee's hot. The only time slaves don't make a choice is if they're in hand shackles and leg shackles, which, for the most part, when slaves were being transported, they were in hand and leg shackles. And also when they were being punished, they would be shackled up. Punished for observing their own, behaving morally and understanding their own human rights, natural rights. Slavery is a choice, folks. People, people say, oh, well, the slaves would have been killed if they would have decided to just be free. Because, once again, once those hand shackles and leg shackles come off, you're free. Your free will is now yours. You have free will. And you can exercise it. And the slaves in the South, once their hands and legs were free, they could have done whatever they wanted to. They could have done whatever they wanted to. Now, would it have been a genocide if the slaves of the South decided that they were just going to be free and they didn't care what anybody else thought? Yes. Many slaves would have been murdered, but slavery would have never have happened the way it did, and it wouldn't have needed Lincoln to free the slaves. I mean, that's another one. Okay, no one can free anyone. Okay, no one can free anyone. That's like that whole, the military's fighting for our freedom. That whole concept is nonsense, because no one can fight. The only person that can fight for my freedom is me. Now, let's say there's a group of individuals that are interested in fighting for their freedom, and we all want to fight, and we all decide to fight for freedom together. Well, then we're fighting for our individual freedom in a collective. It's no one can fight for my freedom but me. I'm the only one that can fight for my freedom. So there you have it. I just, the whole idea of Lincoln freeing the slaves is all nonsense. Because the slaves, unless they had hand shackles and leg shackles, were always free. And we're all always free. We're all free. We choose to be slaves. None of us have to pay taxes if we don't want to. We choose to pay taxes. Now, if a small, if let's just say I choose not to pay my taxes, will it be easy for the slave owners to engage in duress and violence against me and stuff like that, depending on how the situation goes, whether I never decide to pay or I do decide to pay? I mean, yes, that's going to happen, but still, the truth is, it all comes down to this. Would you rather be a slave or would you rather be free? And actually, put it this way, folks. Okay, I would rather die than live as a slave. I mean, really. I would rather die than live as a slave. And, what's coming down the pike here in this country, I'm going to have a decision to make myself. And I've been preparing for this for a long time. Because I don't plan on living in a society like China. I don't. If I was in China, I mean, China's a huge country, lots of different sections, cultures. Cities are a little bit more authoritarian than the country, but I'd be dead in China, man. I wouldn't last. I'd be dead, long dead, if I was living in China. I would be dead. I can barely take what's going on here, and that's before all this lockdown and all this shit here in America. I could barely take it then. I mean, so you look at slavery in the South, and the truth about the slavery in the South is the slaves did not have to be slaves if they didn't want to. They could have fought, they could have died. I mean, look, I'll say this. I mean, you can argue with this, but I would say if just 10% of the slaves in the South would have resisted, a lot of dark-skinned people would have been murdered. It would have been like a genocide and stuff, but slavery would have collapsed. It would have collapsed. And you wouldn't need some ruler to free you. You don't... That's just such nonsense. No one can free me. I have to free myself. No one can free me. No one can free me. Because really, when it comes down to slavery, The difference between slavery and freedom is in a person's mind. It's whether they exercise their will or not. We all have free will. That's what the Creator gave us. Look up the Declaration of Independence and the preamble to the Constitution. I'm pretty sure it mentions in there, that our rights come from creation. We're created. We're beings with higher capability, intelligence, and we're created with free will. And we choose to be slaves. The slaves in the South chose to be slaves. And I'm going to talk about, got some time here, the concept of the house slave. See, a lot of people, we were taught in our little Lily White elementary school in Ocean County, New Jersey. It's all little white kids, which once again, there's no such thing as white, black. Those are all social constructs. We're all one human species. I just, I use it because, our society is so fucked up and enslaved that unless you say, this white person, this black person, no one will know what you're talking about. So here we are, little lily white kids in our little lily white suburban utopia in Ocean County. And we're getting taught that the house slave was the nice dressed slave that served the master his drinks and cooked the food for the master and his family and all that stuff. And you know what? Yes, those were house slaves, but those weren't the real house slaves. Okay, those weren't the real house slaves. Okay, like think about the house when for you casino gamblers and stuff, poker players, right? When you sit down at the table, there's the rake. You got the rake, and that's the house. That's the house's money. That's the house take. That's what the house slave is. The house slave is the master's henchman. Okay, that's what the house slave was. Look up, folks. Look up. There's pictures from the 1800s era where it shows slaves with firearms. How about that? Who would ever think that you would give a slave a firearm? Hey, I'm going to enslave you. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a firearm. Really? Giving slaves firearms. Slaves! Firearms! You wouldn't think they'd be a little worried? The master would be a little worried? Hey, I'm giving my slaves firearms. Is that really a good idea? These house slaves, let me tell you something, man. All this white guilt shit and all this reparations for slavery. You're a descendant of slavery, so we're going to send you a check, a reparation. We're sorry. Get the fuck out of here with that. Look, these people who, with white colored skin, who had no problem with slavery, were total and complete unbelievable trash bags. But just as much of a trash bag as them, if not more, are the house slaves. The slaves who kept the other slaves in line for extra food and better living quarters and more blankets and stuff. And the first thing that I guess people with dark skin need to look at is the fact of the house slave. Okay? And the fact that house slaves, once again, all slaves were slaves because they chose to. Everybody has free will unless they're hand shackled and leg shackled. But the house slaves were big time maintainers of the institution of slavery. And, people with dark skin need to look at that. And keep in mind that I hate to say their own people, because once again, We're all one species. But I'll just say for a fact of argument, their own people contributed to enslaving them. And that's a huge concept. And, you know, people think, oh, yeah, slavery, that was a long time ago. It's all over. Everything's nice now. See, look, you know, black people are on TV now. And look at all these wonderful sports players and all this stuff. Folks, get your head out of your ass. The lingering effects of slavery are still going on today. You want to see? You want to see some slave quarters? You want to see some slave quarters? If you live in like the Jersey and Pennsylvania, Philly area, take a ride down Lancaster Avenue if you got the guts. Take a ride down Lancaster Avenue in Philadelphia. You want to see some slave quarters. You want to talk about, you know, black people, you know, whatever that, you know, that concept are doing so much better. Oh, slavery, that was so long ago. You want to see some slave quarters? Drive down Lancaster Avenue in Philadelphia. Okay? You know, talk about a nightmare. You know, folks, ghettos are created and maintained. Ghettos are created and maintained. There shouldn't be any ghettos in this country. And I think I've touched on this in other videos, but I mean, that whole concept, I think it was Beyonce Knowles, I think. I'm not sure. I don't know for sure. I'm because I searched for a quote and I really could never get it. But I think either her or somebody else coined the term ghetto fabulous. So let me tell you something. I mean, just the word ghetto and fabulous together should be enough to make anyone with any consciousness in them vomit. But going back to slavery, folks, and these ghettos are all about slavery. These ghettos are all about slavery. Slavery still continues, and people just think, oh, everything's great now, and slavery, you know, you had people living in total slavery for hundreds of years, and that's just gonna, once some ruler frees them, that's just gonna go away. Wake up. And we're all slaves. We're all slaves. We're slaves to these banking systems. We're all slaves. We're slaves to a paycheck and a pension, and these house slaves. These house slaves continue today, and people are not going to want to hear this. People are not going to want to hear this. They're not going to want to hear it, but I got to say it. The police and the military of today are the modern equivalent of the house slave. They just are. And everyone knows their neighborhood policeman who's they say is a nice guy, and I guess many of them can be cordial and nice and friendly and personable, but the truth is, folks, they're working for the house. And the house starts with these politicians and going up to the corporate CEOs, the bankers, and then you got the top dark occultists, the royals, and people in the Vatican, Mecca, and Jerusalem. The police and the military are the on-the-ground house slaves. They're the ones that keep everyone else in check. They're the one that keep everyone else in check. And I'm probably going to have to do another video about this, because I don't want to run over too long. My 22-minute threshold pretty much is what I'm at. That's just the truth. And unfortunately, folks, the truth about your friendly neighborhood police officer is that, unfortunately, when the orders come down to lock you down and to enslave you, unfortunately, the way it looks right now, I know I made a video about the fact that there's some police, I made a video about, the police and the military are going to have to make a decision. But I can tell you that you're going to see a different side to your friendly neighborhood policeman. Because when your friendly neighborhood policeman has to choose between you and his paycheck, and many of these policemen, especially the policemen, are making very good money. These local policemen, state policemen, making very good money, especially here in New Jersey. I can tell you right now, it's pretty obvious to see what their choice is going to be. They're going to follow orders. And if those orders enslave you and themselves, then so be it. They're going to follow it. And we're going to choose to be slaves. We're choosing to be slaves now in this lockdown. We don't have to stop our businesses and barbershops and all this stuff. We don't have to do that. We could just go and live our lives and be cautious about the virus and stuff like that. But we don't have to destroy all of our local economies. We could go about our lives. We're choosing to do this. That whole excuse, the governor said we can't do this and that. Well, folks, that doesn't mean we have to abide by it. The police say we can't do this and that. It doesn't mean we have to abide by it. It's just the truth. Slaves in the South. Oh, you white people enslaved us. You enslaved yourself, buddy. Yes, white people in the South were scumbags and they enslaved these people. And actually, folks, guess what? Don't believe me, look it up. One of the origins of community policing in this country came from the capturing of runaway slaves. Look it up. Don't believe anything I say, look it up. But I'm going to wrap it up, and maybe I'll do another video on this, because this is a big one.